Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 4 of 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. My name is Pye.
Dr. Glen.
My amazing co-host. Yes, he has 20 years of experience in clinical psychology. And I have nothing.
What are you talking about,
kidding.
man?
I'm just kidding.
Do we have to do this all over again?
No. This is how we'll start every single episode. So in this episode, I want to talk about this whole concept. So the thesis of my relationship method, of what a healthy relationship looks like, the stupid simple relationship method, is that all relationships are virtually identical.
When we met and you told me this, I was like, bullshit. Like, I didn't say it because we were just getting to know each other, but I was like, that's not true.
This guy immediately does not know what he's talking about.
I was like, I don't know about that one, but you want to elaborate on that more?
I do, because I'm sure a lot of you are calling bullshit on this as well. But my whole premise behind this was that, well, number one, I do feel like, and I've talked about this, a good framework, a good piece of education needs to be simple. It needs to be intuitive. Yeah. And so I didn't want to be like, okay, this is what a healthy relationship looks like if you're business partners, and this is what it looks like if you're friends, and this is what it looks like if you are married. What I wanted to do was see, does the overwhelming data say that by and large, these things are similar? And for me, it did. And I know that you can kind of finagle data to look a certain way.
Sure.
But my argument is that all of these relationships are virtually identical with the exception of intensity.
I agree. And then once I saw your model, the SSRM method, putting it together, I could see, yes, intensity and degrees.
Yes.
The dynamics are the same. It's just a degree and how much of it exists.
Correct.
Yeah.
So essentially what you have on this method, because we've mentioned it quite a few times, but it's sort of a three-piece methodology. When you want to start a relationship, there needs to be desire on both sides, right? And we're talking any kind of relationship, friendship, business partnership, romance, whatever it might be. So that initial desire is what gives both people the want to create a relationship. If one person has the desire and the other person doesn't, nothing happens, right?
Right.
One person gets rejected, the feeling isn't reciprocated, it's not mutual, and it fizzles, usually. Except in the case of stalkers.
They're just very ambitious people.
In the case of stalkers, it's one-sided.
They're not going to let it stop them.
And the lack of reciprocation does not stop them. But yes, for most of us, if somebody does not reciprocate our intention or our desire for a relationship, it doesn't go anywhere. Then you have sustainability, or let's get to desire. Then you go to quality time. We spend time together, right? And through the time that we spend together, we kind of discover whether we want to spend more time together, right?
Yeah, so there's like interest at the beginning, commonality. Oh, I like this person, which has a desire piece. And then you make the decision, am I going to commit to spending time with this person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is that's interesting to me is most relationships, whether it's a new friendship or a new romance, the excitement and the adventure of it, what we call now risk, that piece is so intense that it's enough to kind of say, oh, I want to spend more time. I want to spend more time with Glenn because we just got to know each other and let's hang out again.
Yeah.
So you go to quality time and then you go back to desire and you want to spend more quality time.
Right.
Kind of keep this little cycle between this desire and quality time thing. But then maybe on our 5th time hanging out, you do something that's really obnoxious.
What do I do?
I don't know. Oh. You walk in my home with your shoes on.
Oh, I thought you were being serious. No. I was like, oh, what happened? I was like, okay.
No. But what eventually happens is when you get past that newness of the relationship, you begin to start noticing things where you start to realize, are we actually that similar? Are we actually, this well connected? So when the newness and the excitement kind of fades, then you get to sustainability. And this is the third piece. So it goes desire makes us want to spend time together.
Quality time.
During that time together, we discover whether it's sustainable. Meaning, are we spending our time having a good time and enjoying and getting our benefits from the relationship? Or are we spending that time trying to maintain the relationship and spend a lot of emotional effort on just keeping the other person happy and keeping things going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the closing loop.
Right.
If it takes up too much energy, you don't have the desire to continue.
Mm-hmm.
If the benefits outweigh the costs, then you keep feeling desire and it keeps this loop going.
Right. So sustainability out of the three components is what you have to focus on to see if this relationship is going to work out or not.
Yeah. The long-term factor of whether the relationship is going to work is all in sustainability, which also the place to fix a relationship. And this is where I got to the criticism of like counseling. You know, counselors go and they go head on at like the desire piece. Are you relatable? Are you, do you have common interests? Do you want to spend time together? Are you feeling loved? Are you feeling secure? They look at all these symptomatic problems.
Exactly.
But all the actual underlying issues are in sustainability. That's the only place to focus in on, the only place to fix.
Exactly. So, symptom focus, like communicate more, spend more time together. But, the way that you describe it, desire and quality time, that could be like a short-term fling, right? I mean, there's a short-term desire to get together, you have a fling, but that's it. There's no sustainability whatsoever. So if you come in as a couple trying to create sustainability, but then the counselor is like, well, just go on more dates.
Yeah.
Just communicate more. It's reducing the relationship to this kind of convenient answer, but more is required. And that's frustrating.
Well, so I'm gonna tell you the creepy part now. It's not really that creepy. It's just I'm gonna put you on the spot. So the fling, right? We think of that term as like romantic. We think of the honeymoon phase of a relationship as like only applying to romances. But I'll bet I'm going to ask you this question, and I'd like our listeners to actually ask themselves. Do you feel that giddy honeymoon feeling with a platonic relationship, maybe to a lesser extent? I mean, it's not going to be as much, but is that there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to me, that's a trigger. Like that goes back to the whole like trauma trigger approach. And even like in the last episode, when you talked about like when you met your spouse and when I met mine, those are all triggers.
Well, what if I said, okay, so this isn't trigger based.
Yeah.
It can be, right?
Yeah.
But what if I said, when you and I started our friendship, I kind of had that same giddy rush of like, I'm excited to spend more time with Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to hang out with Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, bro. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not just saying this because we're on air.
But this is where I'm getting at in terms of intensity, right? Each of these new potentially significant relationships kind of can lead us to have those same sort of giddy, happy feelings, that kind of stuff, but just to a different level
degree
of intensity.
Right.
We're not mixing in, the physicality, the intimacy side of it. And so we have it to a lesser extent. But could you also identify friendships with like platonic friendships where you had that sense of excitement early on, and then the relationship just kind of faded quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there was nothing there. There was nothing to sustain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was no sustain.
No common interest.
Isn't that a friendship fling?
It was a friendship fling.
You could say the exact same thing.
I sold myself out.
So,
yeah.
Okay. This is where I got to in the framework as well. And I thought, that's interesting. You can actually feel the same things, but to lesser extents in each of these. So then we get to, okay, well, what are the differences then in terms of intensity versus expectations? Well, when you look at sustainability, the top piece of it is core values, having similar underlying core values. And we all think we know what those core values are, but we don't. And that's part of the process that we'll get into in a different episode. But having similar underlying core values and then being able to look at how do we resolve conflict, how do we have any common interests? Do we have a counterbalanced effort? We call it the 5 C's of sustainability. Okay. So with a friend, we need, and if you think of desire is really you can think of desire as the perceived benefits of a relationship. This is what you and I are getting from a relationship, right? On the sustainability side, this is how much investment emotionally we got to put into it. These are the costs of the relationship. we want to make sure that that relationship bank account is always healthy. This was a term that I really liked from, I believe Dale Carnegie was the first person that used the relationship bank account metaphor. And I really love that metaphor. So think of desire as your deposits, sustainability as your withdrawals. Okay. So when it comes to a more casual friendship, our expectations are ratcheted down along with the intensity of the relationship, right? But as you bring up the intensity of the relationship, as it turns from casual friend to good friend to best friend to like family, you level up every set of expectations along with it. So you could be friends with somebody at, church or maybe at basketball, and you see each other from time to time. You're casual friends and not really share the same values because really the common interest is enough. The fact that you're both there, you chat from time to time. It kind of, it fulfills one little area. But if you want to continue to the next step and you want to keep progressing, then you're going to have higher expectations for the relationship. Now, the highest level of expectation comes from marriage and business partnerships. So I have high expectations of you, Glenn, which I'm sure you have of me too.
No, for sure. It's a very intimate relationship, like business partnership, friendship. It's all the same thing because you have to have those components in place.
Yes.
Conflict resolution, the same core value and visions, all those things are in place.
Yes. So as you bring up the intensity, and I would say marriage would be at the very top of this, right? Marriage would be the top level of expectation because you expect that other person to kind of be everything. And it didn't always be this way. We've kind of made it this way over the past 150 years. We've kind of made it where you're married, you got to be married to your best friend, your romantic lover, your support. Like this person has basically become everything, right? Whereas in the past, we really used to rely on a lot of people for this. So your level of expectation is ratcheted up. And when certain things don't meet the criteria, well, because your expectation is high, you get let down.
Sure.
But it's the same framework.
Yes. Because the sustainability is just not there, or possibly not there.
If it's not there, it's not there. And it doesn't matter whether we're looking at it from a friendship standpoint, a business partnership, a marriage, it's all identical. And in fact, those that are thinking about, but marriage is all about like sex and intimacy. And granted, that is a big piece of what a romantic relationship is, right? But that's really the only difference. And in fact, when you look 5 years, 10 years deep on a domestic partnership or a marriage, what you're seeing is more akin to a beautifully close friendship than it is the early romantic passions of romance.
Absolutely. And then they talk about like the love drug, right? And that lasts for about a couple years. It starts to wear off. And then the marriage then just becomes, how good of a friendship do you have?
Exactly. And the friendship is kind of what fuels everything else.
Right.
Like but that to me was the big revealing moment, was when I started to look at it from, okay, I do believe it is this way. I have enough data. I'm going to develop the framework from this side that everything's identical. Can it be supported? And then putting it into place and testing the framework and seeing, okay, across case study after case study after case study, it's right. These are some things that need to be tweaked. These are some things that need to be changes. We need to expect that intensity, in these relationships is different. But by and large, this is how it works.
No, I agree. You sold me on that. So once I saw the framework and it's looking at sustainability, especially, it's all the same. You're right. Degree and intensity, but the whole format of it, how it works is pretty much the same.
Okay. So I've sold you on this, which means that you're no longer a very good devil advocate in this. What do you think people might argue in this area?
That they are different. Like, once again, like before being sold on this, I would argue that being business partners, having a marriage, having a best friend, they're all different.
Okay. Let's look at the business partner side of it.
So like from a business partner side, I would say that it's less emotional and it's more about the work, and it would be more about, just getting things done. And that would have to be the primary focus of the relationship. So all the other dynamics of sustainability that you would require in a marriage, it would be different in a business partnership.
Correct. So, but what if we looked at it through the same framework, right? So you're saying that the inside of desire, we have this idea of reward. Okay, reward is based on your set of values, and it's your perceived benefits from a relationship. In a business partnership, the primary reward is really the success of the business.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And the underlying core value there should be both of us needing to share this desire, this underlying need for the business to be successful.
But then people can argue, like, what if you have a successful business, but you guys don't like each other? You guys hate each other, but it's successful. That's a different relationship than a spouse or a friend, right?
For sure. And I would say that you can be business, like having a healthy business partnership is a separate thing from being best friends with your business partner. But the same business partnership operates on the same. What we just have to look at it from the standpoint of like, okay, your underlying core values are centered around the company.
Okay.
So your behavior should be centered around those same aspects. Your respect for one another, the regard that you have for each other, is once again based on that underlying set of values. So if you're both operating in the best interest of the company and you're both doing the things that would create reward, and you're going to have regard for each other as business partners.
So in that, what you're trying to say is like, even though you may not like each other, you still have to do conflict management, work things out, because it's the love of the business, maybe not the love of the person.
Correct.
But that dynamic is the same as you fighting at home with your spouse, having conflict. It's the same dynamic.
And the issues that you run into are going to be identical. Do we spend a ton of time resolving conflict? Do we have a counterbalanced effort within the business partnership? It doesn't have to be an identical effort, but is Glenn doing his role and am I doing mine?
So what you're saying then, and then the way you handle things at home is the same way you're going to handle things in a business partnership or a friendship. So it carries over into everything that you do.
Absolutely. And the expectation will be different, right? Because like I said, you can be best friends. You can be married to your business partner. You could be any of those things. But for you and I to carry the relationship into our personal lives, we'd have to be looking at our underlying personal core values and seeing, can we get those to align, right? But from a business standpoint, we don't need to do that. We can keep it limited to just simply the underlying set of values there is the company and the support of the company. Now, if I do things that damage the company, will that affect your regard for me?
Yes.
If I do things that maybe are in the best interest of myself and I argue that, I'm doing it for the company, will it affect our ability to relate to each other? Will it affect the reward that you see in the business partnership?
Yes.
So across each of these, we can look at it identically and just apply the framework to a different arena using core values and this is why we call it core value focused therapy, because the first thing that we do in any relationship is identify core values. That's where we start, right?
Yeah. Okay, so once again, playing devil's advocate again, you would argue that if we fight, okay, so let's say I'm emotionally withdraw from you because we're just not getting along, but we have a business partnership. We have things we have to take care of. That's exactly the same as me loving my wife at home and dealing with the fight at home.
Because exactly the same in what sense?
Well, because the whole argument, the whole premise is that all relationships are the same. It's just degrees, right? So basically it would transfer, meaning that the way that I'm handling a conflict with the business partner, maybe I'm emotionally withdrawn and I'm not really dealing with things. You would argue that I'm doing the same thing at home.
You would very likely take the exact same way that you argue, the exact same way that you handle conflict from your personal life into your business life, for sure.
Okay.
So this is where your whole background in trauma therapy and attachment theory and all that stuff applies, right? Because if I'm avoidant at home, if if we run into conflict at home and I'm the one that runs away to my room, I can very much guarantee that in the boardroom, you're going to be the partner that stands up, runs out the door and slams the door shut, and I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. No, right. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, once again, it took me a while to process this one.
Okay. So what about from a friendship standpoint?
From a friendship standpoint too, like I just looked at like friendships, my old friendships, our friendship, at the time when this was brought up, I was like, they're different though. Yeah. And then like the whole concept of degrees, and then I think maybe others are processing it, but that took it took a while to sink in. Yeah. Because I would be like, no, they're different. Yeah. They're different.
So carrying out the friendship side,
Yeah.
I've got you on board, but we'll go for the sake of like, so I'm going to ask you the question because this is your framework now too. So what if two friends have a differing set of underlying values in terms of their understanding of relationships? So let's say that one friend believes that, you know, friendships are there to kind of share common interests. You hang out and do sports and activities together.
Yeah.
That's their belief in friendship. Friendships are an activity-based relationship. And the other friend has an underlying belief that friendships are based on closeness, about being relatable, about being able to share kind of things that are personal to you. What happens in those two people's relationship?
It's probably just going to fall off.
Why?
Because what they desire, because what they want to sustain the relationship, that doesn't match.
It doesn't match, right?
Or else the person that wants more in the relationship will have to sacrifice and try to shrink themselves to just do the activities. But once it goes more than that, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah. So on the one friend side who values activities, right? Their sense of reward comes from spending time doing those activities. Their sense of regard for the other person is this person good at doing those activities with me? Are they frequently available? Are they someone that I can, you know, everything is attached to that thing.
No, absolutely.
And for the other person, their sense of reward is, do we connect? Do we, are we able to, in fact, if those two friends hung out enough, they would grind against each other. Because one person would probably want to have these conversations in the middle of these activities and like want to dive deep and go and do these things. And the other person just like, dude, this is emotionally draining for me. I don't like talking about this kind of stuff. Now, they're not going to usually get to that point.
Sure.
Because it fizzles before then.
I think most people, what they'll do is they'll just try to make it work. You know, especially the one that wants like more time. And then they'll kind of shrink themselves down and then just go through the cycle of fighting, then withdraw, then just come back. Versus my values are different. I'm going to choose different friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The crazy thing to me was realizing that marriage was no different. The only difference between marriage is we often end up in the relationship before we have this understanding. And I would say most of us end up married before we actually know what a healthy relationship looks like.
No, absolutely.
Then because of the word marriage and because of the social meaning and attachment to it, we are sitting across from another person who is dramatically different from us from an underlying value standpoint. And then we work backwards and try to fix it. Why? Because it's a marriage. Because religiously we're taught that you don't get divorced. Because socially we're taught that you don't get divorced. Because there's a lot of weight and social pressure behind what it is that we have jumped into. And so we're going to sit there and figure it out.
Yeah, a lot of it is not realistic. I mean, you know, before I got married to my wife, we really didn't fight much. But once we got married, 2 candles become 1, right? This is before God. This is eternal.
Yeah.
Post-marriage, we fought a lot.
Yeah.
Because the expectations were ratcheted up. We were trying to live up to the standard. It was a lot to work through.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And 2 people that could have been friends, because the expectations are far lower, now find themselves in a marriage where their expectations are ultimate. They're right up there. They expect everything. And now we're working to try and figure things out.
Right.
But if that were a friendship, it would fizzle just like any other relationship. The only difference there is the underlying social attachment of the marriage itself. This is why we spend, I mean, we geared the 12weekrelationships.com is focused on the couples, not because this doesn't apply to friends. It's because friends are never going to spend the time or money to actually fix the friendship. They're just going to walk away and look for somebody else who naturally kind of fits better, or hopefully they can kind of figure that out, right?
Yeah.
But there's no differences in reality and like how it works. Now, business partners, I think we should actually loop that in at some point onto the 12-week relationship website, because
Absolutely.
you are intrinsically motivated to make your partnership work, especially if you have a successful company and you're like, man, we just need to figure out how to get along at the workplace. They would be invested enough to make it worthwhile to do that. But that was one of the most unfortunate pieces for me, was how do we help friends create better friendships? And to me, it came down to, it's not going to be through coaching. I think it's going to be through our books. They're going to spend $10 on a book, but it's unlikely that you're going to have 2 friends unless they're just best of friends and they're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's another avenue to do friendship coaching. Another business model.
No.
The 12-week friendship.
The 12-week friendship. People would be like, if you're paying, you shouldn't be in that friendship. No. But that was a strange realization to me, was that if you looked at these romances, had they been 2 years or 3 years down the road and had not pulled the trigger on the marriage, they would likely just have gone their separate ways and just tried to find something else, someone else, anything. But the marriage attachment, which I do believe personally that couples who are married should work on it, because I do see a genuine path and something that's not, I won't say easy, but it's fixable. And just like anything else, you're going to have to spend the time and energy on it anyway. You could do it in that relationship. You could do it alone. And in my opinion, the only reason to leave a marriage would be that you genuinely know you'll be happier alone. Not happier with someone else, happier alone. If you genuinely know you'll be happier alone, then it's worth, pursuing that route.
Yeah. But I think more importantly, like if you know the sustainability pieces and you work through it, and then you can live with yourself and be like, you know what, this is just not sustainable. It is time to move on.
That is possible too.
Yeah.
Where if you understand the framework and how it works, that's the cool thing too, is that if this actually existed for me, 14 years earlier in my marriage, and someone said, these are the components of a healthy relationship, and they laid it out in front of me. And they said, this is your responsibility. This is your responsibility. This is your joint responsibility. Within 3 to 6 months, I would have known that this isn't fixable, because the other person is not in a place to be able to do the work. Right. And you would have an answer there as well.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is you know yourself.
Correct.
Right. And you know what you're living for. You know what's driving you, your motivating factors. That's going to help you. That'll make it clear about what you need to do.
Okay. So are there any other possible rebuttals to all relationships are identical? Long-term relationships. Anthony, do you got anything? We got to keep reminding Anthony to chime in, because every time we'll finish one of these episodes and then he'll say, I got a question. And I'm going, why didn't you ask like when we were actually talking?
Do you agree with that? Your family, your friends, business partners, coworkers, they're all the same, just in degrees.
I think it's how conditions are laid out. That's what I've been thinking about right now, is at the opposite end of family. Its conditions are really practical based, and as you move up, it becomes more emotional based, where you're able to tolerate a lot of just practical mistakes that are made, even if they might be unjustified. I think it just switches like which one's prioritized, I guess. As in sales or business, it's don't tank the business. Like, do you have something that you could sell to me that I need? It's just it doesn't need like an emotional connection, but as you get into family relationships, that becomes prioritized, the emotional aspect of it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And I want to frame this the right way. We're saying that healthy long-term relationships all follow the same framework. Not that they're the same relationship. I don't want people to think we're saying that a business partnership and a friendship and a marriage are the same thing. I'm saying, and what we're saying is that
the dynamics are the same.
The framework that they follow, any healthy long-term relationship follows the same framework. And you can think about it from a family standpoint too, right? We look at the term family and we say, we're family, we're always going to be family. But the thing is, when family starts to consistently require more energy than the benefit of the relationship, we do take our breaks. We step away. It's not to say that we're not family anymore, but it is to say that there's not reward in this right now. I don't have regard for you at the time. I don't see ourselves as being relatable.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing reciprocation, or at least I'm not going to reciprocate, because I don't feel like it's worth putting my time into this. So, and what is the root cause? Differences in underlying core values.
And then people will be like, the only thing that's sustaining is we're just family.
We're family.
That's it.
We're family.
Yeah.
And again, personally, I do believe that family means something. So do close friendships. I have, it's taken me a long time to come to this realization that I can have, I've never really understood the term family. Maybe we'll save that for a different thing. But to me, it was, I think in a very polar way. It's a 0 or 1. We're either best friends or we're nothing. And it took me a very long time, and actually working with you to be able to say, no, there's a very healthy middle area where I can say, we're not getting along right now, but that doesn't mean we're not close friends. It doesn't mean that we're not family. It just means that right now we're not aligned. And taking a break from that thing and just taking your time and figuring out. But when it comes to family, it's no different. I mean, I do think that people are, there's a lot of people online that are like, man, even if it's family, if it's toxic, you got to get the F out.
You have to set boundaries. You got to set boundaries for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
You need boundaries.
Yeah. But I mean, one thing that you brought up, like, I was like, oh, I have a friend I haven't seen for years. And you're teaching about the sustainability piece. And you're like, how often do you see that person? I'm like, once a year, if that, maybe a couple conversations. So you're like, so the only thing you guys have is you don't really have a desire to see each other maybe once in a while. You don't have quality time. The only thing that's sustaining you guys is history.
Correct.
And I was like, yeah, that's pretty true.
That happens a lot.
That's why we don't really hang out, because there's other things. I mean, there's a history there, and then it feels cool when we hang out. But the only thing sustaining us is history.
Correct.
And that really hit home. And then even just like family members. Okay, yeah, we're family. What's sustaining us? A lot of times it's just because we're family.
Yes.
But there's no other like qualities of like core values and shared beliefs that sustain it.
And it'll be that way until there's an alignment in those underlying values, right?
Right.
And that could take years. It might never happen, but it does happen. And I can give an example of that. Me and my closest friend from high school, we kind of fell out of touch for a while. I sort of became this very ambitious person that wanted to really push forward in different areas. And I think he was, wanted to create his family and create a different life. And we came back together when he crossed more into the kind of ambitious side, where he still had his set of values, but then he started to go and pursue an MBA, and then was like, I want to work for these companies, and I want to maybe create a company. And we started having things to talk about. And especially at that time, I was also having children. And I started to come back towards the center of like, I want to create a healthy home and a happy home environment.
Yeah.
And so our values kind of came back together again, and we still had our amazing history. And now we can push forward and create more, great opportunities. But the framework has to be there. I mean, you cannot force something when underlying values and all those things are not present.
No, absolutely. You have to have sustainability and all the components of it.
So I've got both of you on board that
sold.
Healthy relationships, healthy long-term relationships, all follow the same fundamental framework.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then my work here is done. And this episode is done. This whole thing is done. 12-week relationships is over.
Done. On to 12-week friendships, right?
On to 12-week friendships. All right, y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you guys would like to learn more, you can head over to 12weekrelationships.com. We actually have 12-week coaching programs that are available, and you guys can get a free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Glen. Yes, folks. Dr. Glen will actually meet with you on the phone or actually via Zoom or Skype.
Yes.
And give you guys kind of a rundown on what he can do for you, and then you guys can book a package and go from there. In the meantime, I'd love for you guys just to follow the podcast, follow the platform. If you subscribe to our newsletter, we will give you awesome insights from the podcast and all the different things that we're putting out on a regular basis. We are not going to send you junk or spam or anything like that. So please know that if we're putting something in your inbox, it's something that we think is worthwhile and worth looking at. But until then, you can find us on all social platforms at 12 Week Relationships, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thank you.